And just like that, the 24th pennant in the prestigious history of the Los Angeles Dodgers is acquired. But it's not quite done yet, because I'm holding up the number 4. They still need 4 more. But in the interim, we're going to celebrate. It's your boys Alonso y Juan on the Dodgers Beat postgame show. Juan, how are you feeling?
I'm feeling good. I mean, it was a great game. We get to go back to the World Series. And most importantly, I was right. I said the Dodgers in 7, and the Dodgers won in 7. We're going back to the World Series.
And huge game tonight by a lot of guys that stepped up. But the one guy that I want to give the spotlight to, who deserves all the props in the world, Julio Urias, Culichi, coming out and just getting dialed in. I was a little nervous in the 9th because of how dialed in he was. But man, did he step up. If that was his audition to be a starter going into the next round against the Rays, I don't know what else you want in a guy as far as an audition goes.
Yeah, I mean, he was fair. Kudos for just coming in there and shutting down the door and going through that top of that Braves lineup in the 8th inning. Now, one thing, though, that we talked about in the preview, in our NLCS preview, what did we want Roberts to do? And that was the eye test, right? It's like if you see someone is pitching well, if you see someone is dominating, ride that hot hand, forget about the statistics, forget about what the matchups say. Trust your eyes. And I'm so happy that Roberts let Urias go back out there in that 9th inning because he deserved to be out there to shut down this game.
And not even that instance, and I said it in our group text, excuse me, the eye test for me was key when he pulled Gonsolin. Because the thing that I was ultimately afraid of is that they were going to let Gonsolin stay in for one more hitter, and I'm glad that they pulled him right then and there. And like you said, they were playing more by feel instead of the stats. And ultimately, that's why they went with Dustin, because the stats show that he tends to pitch a little better when he knows who he's facing. And which is fine, but obviously that's a gamble, and the gamble didn't necessarily pay off. But the end result, of course, it's a 9-inning game, and we have to remember that, is that the Dodgers got the pennant, and they're on to the next round. So, and all the credit to these guys, too, because at no point in time did you ever see them panic, even being down 3-1. So all kudos in the world goes to the team because they emphasize that they're on the stage. It was a team win. Overall, everyone stepped up. Obviously, Corey Seager was the NLCS MVP. But I'm kind of curious if you're joining us on the Twitter machine, the YouTube, whatever. We like to hear from you guys tonight. We're going to celebrate because obviously you get one day to celebrate, and then the big show dances, and you have to enjoy them because you don't know if you're going to be back here. So if you're joining us, please tweet at us. Our Twitter handles are below. If you want to follow us as well, by all means. If you want to, comment anything, tell us what you think the big moment was for you. But talking about big moments, Kike Hernandez goes 1 for 2 with that pinch hit solo home run. That man, if he does, and I hope he re-signs with the Dodgers, but if he doesn't, he got himself paid. My man is getting paid because he's an October bat. At that moment, obviously, that was a huge momentum shift. How did you feel at that point?
I mean, it was huge, but for me, I think the bigger play in the series, and maybe you wanted to talk about this later, but I'm going to go to it right now, was in the last 3 games, we have seen the Braves make mistakes, and the Dodgers made the Braves pay for those mistakes. There was the Ozuna base running play from third, where Mookie was able to double him up. The Albies, and then that double play that Turner turned today on that ground ball where they were able to get Swanson in the rundown from third to home. Now, for him to dive to not only tag Swanson, I mean, if he missed him, I mean, we'd be screwed there. But not only he tagged them, and then I get it, Riley helped us out by hesitating going to third, but that double play was huge. And what did we talk about earlier? We had talked about how the Dodgers needed to limit the damage to avoid those big innings that killed us in those middle games that we lost in the series. That double play to me was huge. And then, of course, the defense, I think, is what went ahead and triggered that momentum swing over to our side, leading to that home run by Kiku.
No, and the defense came up huge. Mookie Betts with as I said on Twitter, a casual Mookie Betts play, just jumping, timing that catch, robbing the home run from Freddie Freeman. Just preposterous defense by the Dodgers today. AJ Pollock had a couple good defensive plays as well today. We talked about yesterday how going into this game today that everyone kind of had to be locked in defensively in order to give the Dodgers a chance, and they were in. And to Justin Turner's credit, if he doesn't dive, this game and the outcome of it could have been totally different because of how close the game was. And as we said last night, well, at least I said for sure, it was going to be a close game no matter what, because these Braves, it's a deep team. It's a deep team, and they threw everything in the kitchen sink that they could at the Dodgers today, and the Dodgers just a couple hits were able to do better. And the Dodgers were hitting the ball hard. The Braves were hitting the ball hard.
Yeah.
They were hitting Gonsolin really hard. And obviously they were super patient that first inning against Dustin May, where they were able to get those walks. So, all credit to them. It wasn't an easy feat to be able to get here. But again, this team is, as we said yesterday, this is a different Dodgers team. They were down 3-1. The alarms were going around everywhere, five stage fire, all sorts of craziness. But the Dodgers themselves, they were never concerned. They played it cool. And they went into it today playing it cool, and they're able to advance.
Yeah, it was just, it was one of those things that I think you lose sight of it because of the great moments that we had in the game. I know a lot of Dodger fans maybe don't like close games, especially in a Game 7, because it was a stressful game and for everybody watching. But, to me, this is what playoff baseball is. It's those one-run games where, the smallest moves that you make are going to determine your success. And my hat's off to Dustin May and to Gonsolin. You might want to get into this later. I don't know if you were, but the fact that Dustin May didn't know he was going to start the game until 1 o'clock, I think is huge. Because these are guys that are into their routines. Now, mind you, everyone in that bullpen should have been ready to go by the first inning because it was all hands on deck. But still, 1 o'clock seems to me like a really late notice to give somebody, hey, to start a game. The fact that he went out there, and yes, he was rocky. Bases on balls kill us in this series, and I hope we can limit those in the World Series. But I think it's huge that he was able to get that double play ball and, again, limit the damage. Gonsolin, I think, was huge again. Being able to limit the damage, knowing he didn't have his stuff today. Gonsolin battled through, but he was able to get us through the game. And I'm just finally the bullpen stepped up, and it was just great to see.
Well, and a huge step for Julio Urias tonight. He had no walks, and we talked about that last night. The walks were going to kill us, and prior to Julio coming in, the only other reliever that didn't give up walks was Blake Trinan. And everyone else, they got, guys on base. And the caveat with that is these Braves will grind, and they will grind hard and get it going.
Before you move on, I just want to say something about Blake Trinan.
Yeah.
I tip my hat to that guy because at the beginning of the series, he got hit. He got hit hard. He got rocky. But he bounced back, and he was solid for the rest of the series, and that was huge.
Oh, and it's going to be huge going into the World Series because the Rays themselves are a pesky lineup as well, and we'll dive into that, on our preview show tomorrow. But in the interim, Blake, it's kind of been one of those where he's been able to, kind of rekindle the flame, if you will, because there was a lot of questions going into the season about some of these Dodgers relievers that were acquired, like Trinan, Jake McGee, guys like that. Even Bruce Gratterall, if you recall, way back when, which feels like an eternity ago, when the Dodgers traded for him. Originally, he was not supposed to be a Dodger. The Red Sox didn't want him because of some stuff on his injury report, if you will, on his documents. And to me, that's still a steal of a trade based on what ended up happening with all that commotion when that trade went down for the Mookie deal. And all credit in the world as well to Andrew Friedman for making that acquisition happen. And again, some of these other acquisitions. And so, Trinan stepped up huge. He was, again, there was question marks because of the issues that he'd been having over the last couple of years. But with the Dodgers, again, their coaching is just second to none. Their scouting is second to none. They had to make some subtle, changes to him and to Jake McGee. And here we are. We're talking about guys that have stepped up huge, that helped win the pennant, and that are now going and advancing into the World Series in 2020. So, all you can do is just tip your cap to those guys. And a tip of the cap, too, to the Braves. The Braves fought like hell. It's a funny stat going into today. Neither organization had actually lost the Game 7.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, so that was a crazy stat going into that. I didn't know that either. I for sure thought that the Dodgers had lost the Game 7, but then I'm also reminded that back in the day they didn't play 7 Game series.
So, but I mean, they hadn't lost the Game 7 in the NLCS, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. So all, as far as that goes, because obviously the Dodgers have lost Game 7 in the World Series, but and so did the Braves. But in the NLCS itself, they hadn't lost the Game 7. I did not know that. So all credit in the world to these guys to show up today and go out there and get it going. A dude that we talked about when the series had started, that was going to be imperative. He had kind of a lackluster series, but obviously it's paid off now. Cody Bellinger had some great defensive plays all throughout the series, but today, no play bigger than what he did today.
Yeah, I mean, I love how he pimped that home run walk. I mean, that home run that he pimped was fantastic, and I'm really happy that he was able to get that moment because he struggled. He's had a history of struggling in the postseason. So it was great to see that guy get rewarded. I can't stress enough. I mean, like you said, we get caught up in the excitement of a 7-game series. But this was a team that was down 2-0. This is a team that was down 3-1. And for them to come back and win this series, I mean, look, I'll be fully honest. Off the air, I was having a lot of conversations with my friends who thought this series was over. But this Dodger team really showed us something. And more importantly, maybe some of you aren't old enough to know this, but we broke the 1985 NLCS Cardinals curse tonight. Because that was the last time a team came back down 2-0 in the NLCS was when the Cardinals did it to the Dodgers. So I think that's all pointing in good direction for us, and I'm really excited. But I'm very happy for Cody that he got to have that postseason moment. He also had a Game 7 home run in the 2018 NLCS, right? Against the Brewers.
He did. He's got 2 of those boys now. So, I mean, he stepped up as a gamer. And to clarify one thing, our score has a typo on it. Our apologies. Dodgers beat the Braves 4-3, not 3-1. So our apologies there on that typo. But no, I mean, guys that we've been talking to that needed to stepped up huge today. And again, the defense was on point. There was a couple hiccups, if you will, where some stuff could have gone awry a little bit, if you will. But the Dodgers were able to contain it, and that's what was important. Is even though that they got into those struggles kind of in the beginning, they were able to contain it and kind of face that adversity. And here we are. They're advancing ahead, and it's the 21st World Series appearance for the Dodgers franchise, which I'm sure is a preposterous record somewhere that they just beat in some capacity. But the next step, the next task at hand is to have 4. And they got to get these 4, and then obviously we don't have to worry about 1988 anymore, and we're going in there. So looking ahead to the Rays, we'll look at a couple things. Clayton Kershaw's supposed to go in the first game from everything that's being reported. After tonight, obviously all the momentum in the world is going in the Dodgers' favor. How do you look at that game 1 starting out with Kershaw?
Well, it's kind of out of necessity, isn't it? I mean, they threw you can't throw Buehler, you can't throw Diaz, and considering that we struggled to have a 4th starter in this series between Gonsolin, I mean, Kershaw was really our only chance to have him start game 1. I'm just glad that they didn't throw Kershaw in this game. There were shots. You saw Kershaw was in the bullpen, And you and I, we talked about this. The thing that drives me crazy, I sometimes feel about this team, is they really want to give Kershaw that redemption moment to come and save the day. And I'm glad that they resisted the urge. And maybe they resisted it because of that necessity that if they did win this game, they needed him to start game one.
No, and it's in our previous show. We'll go into the rotation woes, if you will. I don't necessarily want to call them that. It's just because everyone at this point, when you get to this point of the season, when you're the final two, everyone's gassed, everyone's sore, everyone's hurt. There's something going on, lingering, ailing, whatever the case may be. So that part of it is going to be interesting to see what the Rays. But again, we'll dive into that in the preview show, which will be up at some point tomorrow. But all in all, tonight, I think what was huge as well is that the Dodgers were able to contain the Braves enough that they didn't have to dive deep into their own bullpen, which would have been a far bigger issue going into Tuesday. Because, again, the series starts Tuesday, and the Rays are going to have an extra day of rest, technically, even though the Dodgers technically had one in the beginning of the series because they didn't start till when they started. So it's one of those things where, like, everyone's kind of on an even playing field going into Tuesday, if you ask me. Because the other caveat is the Rays have to travel, the Dodgers don't. So, it's kind of one of those, like, you flip a coin. But for the Dodgers relievers, the ones that were in that game today, to be able to step up, and, again, to your credit, Dustin May, not knowing that he wasn't going to go until 1 o'clock in the afternoon today, and in Game 7 of all, scenarios as well, huge. And mind you, he just pitched 2 days ago. And he threw 18 pitches, but I mean that's kind of your typical side session bullpen day, kind of situation. And he had the one run there, and the 2 walks and the 1 strikeout. So he was able to control it a little bit, which was good to see. Obviously, Tony Gonsolin gave up the other 2 runs, but all things considered, he went the 2 innings, and the rest of the way between Gradwell, Treinen, and Urias, they were able to get it controlled. And that's what the Dodgers need. Going into this World Series, that's the sort of stuff the Dodgers are going to have to do against the Rays, because the Rays, you may not know a whole bunch of those guys. You might know maybe Mike Zunino and Margot, but all of them are grinders just like the Braves. And so that was huge today. But again, Mookie Betts just casually makes highlight reel catches all the time. And it's one of those intangibles that you forget because of how good he is. But man, if that ball goes out, I feel like that game totally changes.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess I can't stress enough, I think what makes Mookie so good, aside from the talent, that he has talent that nobody else has, is the fundamentals. And I think the key to that is you see the approach that he took to both home runs that he robbed in the series, and compare it to the approach that Pache took in center field to some of those balls. Because I'm not to say that Pache should have caught some of those balls, but he had an opportunity. But the approach, the routes that he took to those balls prevented him or made it a lot harder for him to make those catches. But Mookie today's catch, Mookie looked like a basketball player out there. He looked like he was Jordan out there, dunking from the free throw line to catch that ball. And it was completely amazing. And yeah, it was a huge momentum swing. He did it offensively. He did not have the series we all expected him to. But the guy did not quit. The guy did not put his head down. The guy did not feel sorry for himself. He didn't throw a pity party. He went out there and he continued to play hard. And his defense was huge in this series.
And another key stat for this Game 7, the Dodgers were able to contain Acuna, Freeman, and Ozuna to all 3 of those guys to 1 hit. That's huge. Going into a Game 7, winner-take-all situation, if you're going to have that damage come from anywhere else, why not have it be the bottom of your lineup? Granted, Dansby Swanson had that home run, and that was a bomb. But at the same time, you're, in my opinion, you're willing to eat that if Acuna and Freeman and Ozuna don't get it going. And that's huge going into a situation like this because you're scrutinizing every single pitch and every single at-bat so hard that it's far more exhausting than just the physical side. And I think that's a part that a lot of people don't really take into account when you have pitchers going out there and grinding it. So again, all credit in the world to these Dodger relievers that stepped up, because we have to remember, Dustin May and Tony Gonsolin are 26 and 22, 23 years old. So those are it's their first time in the big spot and they were kind of thrown and thrusted into it. Obviously out of, like we said a minute ago, out of necessity. And they were able, in my opinion, for all things considered, they were able to hold it down. And here we are, advancing to the World Series. Now, I'm glad that you got your 7th game and that your prediction came to fruition, and we don't have to have your angry rant. But how do you feel going into the World Series now that we've seen this team come back from adversity, if you will?
I'm excited. I know it's going to be a battle. I know it's going to be a battle with those because the Rays have a very good bullpen, and they have guys like you said that maybe we haven't heard, but these guys are, they're scrappy hitters, and they're in there, and they're not taking anything for granted. But I'm feeling really good about the Dodgers. But there are some concerns going into it, and that is, how much did this emotionally take out of the Dodgers, this series? I mean, this series was draining. It was up and down. I thought it was very telling who we saw in the game today. I think it was obvious who Roberts now trusts in that bullpen. The fact that after Gonsolin, he went to Blake Trinan, I was really surprised because I feel like Blake Trinan has been getting a lot of work in this series, and I was like, he might be tired, he might be out there on fumes. But then he went to Gradle. So as much as we like to give, Robert's grief and criticize him for the moves he makes, and that's what happens with a manager, we also have to give him credit for the decisions that do work out for him. He avoided Gradle ball for a reason yesterday, right? He didn't want to run these guys into the ground because he knew he needed them today. So the fact that we saw these guys, that's probably a hint of who we're going to see in those high leverage situations in the World Series.
And it's 100% true. And this team, I mean, for me, what's going to be huge is even when the proverbial, when the going gets tough, they're obviously be reminded of, hey, we came back from 3-1. And against the Braves, and again, and I still believe it to be my opinion, whoever won the series is going to be the favorite to win the World Series. And I just think top to bottom, the two better teams were in this league instead of the AL. And that's not even a knock on the Astros because those guys are the worst. It's just more that it's just the reality of baseball 101 is these two teams are far better built, I think, to go 7 games without kind of getting caught up. Because the thing is the Rays, seemingly enough, the Rays were up 3-0 and had the opportunity to clinch, and they ended up having to give up games because of mistakes. And so that's going to be interesting to see how that with the Dodgers, because again, Dodgers and Rays also, because it's the pandemic year, did not play each other. So that's going to be interesting to see, and also to see how the Rays, adjust, if you will, to playing in Globe Life, where they've been at Petco for a while, and two totally different setups. And again, they're going to, it's like what we talked about before, they need some time adjusting to the mound, et cetera, the line sights, all that stuff. So, and that's going to be interesting to see that end of it. But as far as the attrition numbers go, I'm curious to see who's going to look gassed and who's not. And I hope one of those people that is not gassed is Blake Trinan. Because Blake had himself a hell of a series. He definitely stepped up. And truthfully, he made some mistakes. He made some costly mistakes too. And for him to kind of redeem himself to where we are right now is huge. And again, as we talked about Mookie, he just said in the post-game presser that he was asked, or rather on being with the Dodgers for many years to come. I think year in and year out, we're going to compete, and everything about the Dodgers is about winning, and that's in my DNA. So, I mean, that shows you the kind of gamer attitude that Mookie has, and it's not going to go away. And again, that's why I think it's one of those things where all of us, for lack of a better term, we're going out there and dropping the alarm bells, and here we are after 3-1, advancing to the World Series, and we didn't get we didn't get neither.
We didn't get interview. I was completely worried that we were going to get it in the ninth. I was like, it's coming. The interview is coming. But Luckily, we avoided it because I'm telling you, we broke the curse. We broke the 1985 NLCS Dodgers-Cardinals curse. So it's all good signs. One thing I do want to point out, though, because I know we have Braves fans that watch our show, okay? I know you already gave the Braves credit because it was a hell of a series. This is when I say that sometimes you obviously need effort and talent and win, but you also need a little bit of luck. The Braves had injuries. Those starting pitchers that we saw weren't the starting pitchers that we were supposed to see at the beginning of the season for the Braves. So now they spent a lot of money on that bullpen, and in the end, I think the bullpen was their downfall. But the Braves had a lot of injuries, and for them to take us to 7 games with those injuries is a reason why I don't think we can take the Rays for granted just because they're not the big name. I am curious to see how the Dodgers react in that first game of the World Series, coming off such a high from this tough series.
No, and all credit in the world to the Braves. I mean, they were grinding, and I think at some point what it ultimately comes down to is the battle of attrition, as I said. They essentially were, hey, we can't do this anymore. I think that's kind of where it came down to,
Minter looked like a completely different pitcher today.
He did. And for me, what was kind of the dead giveaway about that is when they went to Melanson. For them to come out with Melanson as quickly as they did, I think that was kind of a show of like, oh man, I think our guys are too gassed to be able to continue that. And a credit as well as to the Dodgers because they were grinding out those at-bats. That Bellinger at-bat when he hit the home run, that was a hell of an at-bat. He was grinding it out. He was sitting back. And granted, he was waiting fastball, right? He was sitting fastball, but he grinded it out. And there was a couple suspect calls on that in that at bat as well. There was a fastball that was off the plate that they called a strike, and I was like, I don't know about that. But it's one of those things where the hitter also has to adjust just like the pitcher. And I think Cody did, and obviously the outcome was that bomb. So it's just one of those things where it's the true tried plan that they kept emphasizing, that these guys weren't sticking to the plan. All credit to them as far as sticking to that. But another guy that low-key stepped up for everything today, that was out there just going out there and doing everything, was Will Smith. Will Smith, when he had those 2 RBI in that, early on in the game, showing everyone why there's all the hype, with Will. And all credit in the world to him. Obviously, he had the big at-bat last night, and then here we are today. And Will, obviously, aside from Austin Barnes essentially being Clayton Kershaw's personal catcher, Austin Barnes is the best catcher for the Dodgers right now. But in my opinion, he might be the best hitting catcher in all of baseball. Just because you don't really see that sort of offense coming from a guy like that. And even Buster Posey in his heyday, he had, obviously I'm not comparing the two because they're 2 on different spectrums, but as far as the way that he calls games and he offensively controls it, and his plate presence is huge because he's able to frame, which is one of those intangibles that you look for in a catcher, and that's huge with the staff because Blake Treinen had some cover, some pitches, if you will. That one ball that he spiked, that very easily could have led to a couple runs. So it's
and there was nothing he could have done on that.
No, absolutely not.
Nothing he could have done on that.
No, and that's not even Treinen's fault. All Treinen was trying to do is just get the ball to spin. When you're trying to get a slider to spin like that, there's nothing you can do. The catcher can't do anything. It's just one of those things where you just hope and pray that your chest protector stops it and that the guy chases. And if the guy chases, that's the best case scenario. But all credit in the world to Big Willie to step up and do the thing. For you, obviously, we know that Corey Seager's the MVP. No doubt, there's no doubt that he was going to be the MVP. But if there were to be a co-MVP, if you will, a secondary one that has not the sexiness that Corey has, who would that be for you in the series?
I'm going to go a little left field on you on this. I'm going to go with emotion. I think emotion was an MVP of this series because you saw it from the Braves, right? The Braves, if someone got a single, they were hyped. Acuna was doing hurdles over the dugout. They were pumped. Ozuna was pumped. I mean, I was a little annoyed by the number of times that I saw them stir it up. But hey, I mean, that's what kind of makes baseball fun, right? And I feel like the Dodgers were so quiet and they're stoic. They were who they were. And then all of a sudden something changed. And you saw, like, when Will Smith hit that home run, and he immediately pointed at that dugout. You saw it. I mean, the passion was coming out, and I think it was something that the Dodger fans were waiting for, right? All the Dodger fans just love seeing it. There was a tweet that I saw today that after Cody Bellinger pimped the home run today, they said, you know, if that was Acuna, we would have had a 15-minute talk about the unwritten rules. And it's like, look, I get that, but I loved seeing emotion. I love that the fire was lit. Like when the first catch that Mookie made to rob a home run, his reaction immediately after that. I mean, for me, seeing that kind of emotion added the urgency to the series. And that, to me, I think, propelled the Dodgers, allowed the Dodgers to come back from 3-1. Was that finally they were playing with some fire, and I think it came from the fact that they were letting their emotion out. I mean, I think you said it in our group chat today. After Kike hit that home run, he looked like he was pissed when he was looking at the dugout, right? But it was the intensity that was coming out. So for me, I think emotion was the second MVP for the Dodgers.
Let me tell you what that home run reminded me of. In 2015, when Jose Bautista hit that bomb, and he threw the bat, and obviously, you know, fast forward to where we're at now, Rougned Odor returned the favor. But, you know, it's one of those things where I think the evolution of the game has gotten us to this point where there's more emotion because people, you know, kids, especially younger kids, they aren't necessarily fans of teams anymore, they're fans of players.
Right.
And I think one of those things that comes with that is that level of emotion that you show. And Kike kind of being stoic with how, you know, he had a bat flip, and all credit in the world is and I'm the type of guy, as far as like the culture I come from, you know, having worked in the game for a long time, etc. If you don't want the guy to pimp the home run, don't let him hit the home run.
Right.
So, and that's the embodiment that I come from. So, and you know, credit to the Braves because that obviously could have gotten into the skin, but a lot of those guys are old school. So it's one of those things where when Kike hit that home run, he was pretty stoic, but he also knew that the task at hand was, you know, we still need more. But also when he got in that dugout, he was pumped. That's the most pumped I've seen Kike in a long time.
Yeah.
And that dude, for the most part, keeps the dugout, the clubhouse pretty loose. You know,
I think he was more pumped for this home run than the three he hit in Chicago.
Yeah.
And in 2017 on NLCS.
And mind you, a part of that is because I think even these guys know that this team feels different. This team, you know, in comparison to the NLCS and you know, in 17 to now, even in 18, you know, this team feels different. It feels more complete to me, and it definitely has a different vibe than it had been. Obviously, different players. You know, Chase Utley's no longer here. David Freese is no longer with this current group. You know, some either, you know, Adrian Gonzalez, you know, guys like that. There's a whole bunch of guys that are no longer with the team that had a different, you know, kind of component to that culture. But this is definitely a much younger team. And that shows with the intensity and how loose they were. You know, as the game went on, even with the 1-run lead, they were definitely getting a little loose from the dugout, you could see, but they were for sure aware of what was going on. But I mean, I'm curious, just as a hyperbole or hypothetical, if you will. Let's say they pull Julio in that night, and let's say they do in fact go to Kenley. I'm curious to hear what your thought process would have been at that point had they done that.
My initial thought would have been we're getting needed here. You know, because this is what happens to the Dodgers, right? It's just they got us back into the Game 7, they get us all excited for it, and now it's going to end in the most horrific way. But again, I have to give Roberts credit, because something tells me if they even would have gone with Jansen in the ninth, I think Jansen would have come through. He would have come through because it was the bottom of the Braves lineup. I feel Roberts handled Jansen really well in this series by putting him in positions where he wasn't going to get hammered, right? You didn't see Jansen face Freeman. You didn't see him face Ozuna, right? He chose the right moments. So I have a feeling that if he would have, and there was a couple of my friends that texted me in the night saying, wait a minute, why aren't they bringing Jansen? And I was just like, no. Julio is the right call. You let Julio finish this game. But something tells me that if Jansen would have come in, we still would have won this game.
No, and I think it was one of those things, and to your credit, where David has been scrutinized so much over the last few years, we forget things like the amount of pennants that he's won since he's been here, the situations that he's kind of had to work through. All things considered, I don't think Dave gets enough credit in some instances. And I think today is proof of that, where he had managed, well, not even today, even yesterday, the last couple times he used Kenley, he didn't put him in I don't want to say high leverage situations. He put him in situations that he knew where there was a higher probability of Jansen coming out on top. And that for me is huge for anyone going in and that knows anything about rehab starts, that knows anything about just getting kind of like extra work in, is you want to go out and put your guy in a situation where you set them up for success as best you can. And I think that was huge for Kenley going into the World Series. Because, again, we've heard all the things about Kenley. I mean, even us here on this show, we beat Kenley like a dead horse. We beat him, right? And all credit in the world to him. We talked about it yesterday, and it's going to be it's kind of ironic because if there were to be like we'll say a comeback player of the series, I feel like it would be Kenley because of how it started to where we are now. And it's like those memes on Twitter right now, like how it started and where are we now? In 9 days, right? So I think it's gonna be, I think that's gonna be huge going into the World Series. And then most importantly, he's not gassed. And I think that's gonna be one of those things that you're gonna see that intangible of this bullpen. That some of these guys are not gonna be gassed. I think in some instances, with some of those guys, I think some of them are gonna feel a little relieved that they made it ahead, and I think they're gonna pitch better. However, I think some of them are going to feel more pressure and think in their minds, hey, you know what, I need to step up. And I think one of those guys is Julio. I'm sorry, not Julio. Victor Gonzalez, strong Mexican. I think that's a guy that's going to have a huge series, going into this. But again, as we start to wrap this, so we can celebrate a little bit. I'm kind of curious to hear how you think the rotation will look out, and again, we'll dive into it in a deeper way going into our previous show. But I'm curious to hear your take on the rotation going into this World Series.
I think you're going to have Kershaw game one. I think because Julio went the 3 innings today, I think you're going to see a bullpen game in game 2. And then in game 3, you're going to see Buehler, and I think that will give enough rest to bring Julio back for game 4. And then at that point, depending on where you are in the series, if you're down, or if the series is tied, or if you're up, you might go ahead and give Gonsolin a start in game 5, just to give Kershaw maybe another day of rest before you come back with Kershaw in game 6. And then in 7, I mean, it's all hands on deck again. You can go with Buehler, you can go with Diaz. I mean, at that point, that's the way I see it.
So my too soon to predict before the previous show prediction is that World Series is going to be 7 games, and I think it's going to be Kershaw, Buehler, and Diaz, and I think it'll go 1, 2, 3 like that. And then, like you said, we'll see kind of where they're at, if they're down, if they're up, whatever the case may be. It's going to be interesting, but that is, obviously, we'll dive into it deeper tomorrow, but my prediction is it's going to be another long series, and it's going to be another grinder, and it's going to be fun. Because these are 2 really good teams. And to be honest, if I'm honest with you, I know we all were talking yesterday that we wanted it to be the Astros. I'm glad it's not. Just because I think it would have added another level of intensity where it may have taken the Dodgers out of the element, if you will. And I think that's just going to be fun. Because there's a bunch of guys on these teams that, the storylines, Andrew Friedman and his former team, a lot of these guys know each other as well. The Rays starters themselves are the truth. So it's going to be a lot of fun. And also, there's a lot of, unknown players with the Rays that don't really have that national TV exposure because of the market they play in, that are really good, that you're going to see in this series that are going to push the Dodgers to the limit. And truthfully, I think that's the only way that the Dodgers should be playing right now in order to kind of prove to everyone, hey, we have all, the proverbial monkey on our back, and now we're going to get it off by going out and doing kind of the improbable, as Vince Scully once said, and getting it going. But we'll focus on that tomorrow. For now, everyone have a good time. what a series! Like what the roller coaster itself. The voice in the sky, Roger. I'm glad that you came through it healthy and didn't have to get you an ambulance. And I mean, all in all, it was also just fun to have therapy about it, and so we didn't have to sleep in pain.
That's right.
But going into it, like I said, we'll have a preview show for you tomorrow. Into the interim, the Dodgers win 4-3. They advance to the World Series, which will start on Tuesday. You can catch us here on @DodgersBeat on Tuesday after that game. And we'll do a preview show tomorrow. And so if you have any questions that you want us to address in that preview show, please tweet us. Our handles are here at the bottom. You can also tweet @DodgersBeat, find us, shoot us a message. In the interim, stay safe. And wear your mask if you have to go outside. And until Tuesday night, we will see you then. We're after Game 1 of the Dodgers World Series. God, that feels so good to say. But until then, we'll see you guys then. But for myself and Juan, we will talk to you on Tuesday night.